All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 24 of the ProShip ParcelCast, where today we will be playing along with an anti-Valentine's Day theme and putting the spotlight on saying goodbye, why companies are breaking up with their current shipping software vendors. My name is Taylor Pawelka, Director of Marketing at ProShip, and I'll be your host today. I'm joined by Justin Cramer, one of ProShip's co-founders, and Dave Salter, who is part of our business development team. Justin, why don't you go ahead and kick off introductions?
Hi, everybody. Justin Cramer. As she said, I'm the co-founder of ProShip. I've been in the logistics industry for over 22 years, and I've had the pleasure of being able to implement more than 300 different solutions across 4 different continents.
And I'm Dave Salter, and I'm on the business development team, and I'm usually the one that's doing most of the reach outs to our new clients and hearing why things aren't going well for them and why they're looking at multi-carrier shipping software. So it should be a great discussion today.
Awesome. So we're hot off another holiday peak season, and you both speak quite regularly with the industry's top retailers and other enterprise shippers. But I've been hearing some things are a little shaky in the industry. Like there are many companies in limbo about their current shipping software vendors, whether that be because of mergers and acquisitions, possible product sunsets, or just plain bad installs that didn't really go as planned. So let's dive in with vendor focus. What is really going on?
Well, I'll start with that one. It seems like when we're hearing from the customers out there, they're questioning the vendors. What's happening out there? Is their product being sunsetted? It's not being supported anymore. And with that being said, there's a lot of frustration in what's going on out there. Justin, why don't you take it from there with what you see from some of the things that are going on?
Yeah, in the market, there's been a huge amount of consolidation. We're seeing a lot of buyouts by larger companies, by ERPs, WMSs, and OMS companies that want to really consolidate shipping inside their solutions. And what we're finding is that when those companies pull in these specialized shipping software companies like ourselves, it doesn't always work as well. Shipping software is a difficult piece of software. It isn't sold for as much as what an ERP or a WMS might go for. And so we find a migration of personnel from the more difficult, more specific nature of shipping software to the more profitable, more flexible nature of a WMS, ERP, or OMS.
So Justin, with that, is there one particular thing why people don't want to do the parcel solution? What makes it so difficult?
One of the big things that makes shipping software so difficult is compliance. Compliance never stops. It's a lot like the tax software pieces in ERPs and point of sale software. It is the difficult thing because you have to be right. You have to have the right calculations, the right documents, the right everything. And that requires a lot of discipline. That requires a lot of, well, not fun within, for most software engineers. It's not really fun to go through and pick through large CSV files and dive through esoteric PDFs to find out why you might round up at the 0.1 mark versus rounding down at the 0.4 mark. You know, there's just a lot of little details that matter tremendously to producing a very good product. And it's not that any one engineer or anything like that moving is going to degrade the overall quality of the product. It's the death by 1,000 paper cuts. To do great shipping software requires a good number of excellent engineers who are dedicated to the task.
So are you guys hearing that companies are scared that, say, like their vendor gets bought out and they're kind of forced in this environment with a bunch of other specialty softwares? Are they nervous that they're going to be forced to upgrade? Are they nervous that, you know, the product might sunset altogether?
Yeah, so that's a very real requirement for or very real risk for a lot of our contemporary competitors. A lot of that has to do with the fact that their software architecture, they're not a continuous integration, continuous deployment type solution. Instead, they create large waterfall versions. And what this means is that they're going to create very big versions. They're going to take years to produce them, perfect them, And then as technology continues to move forward, they're going to do that again. And so once you get a couple of versions ahead, in order to provide great support, you really do have to sunset those older versions. And of course, from a sales standpoint, if you're not doing a continuous integration, continuous deployment, that means each of these major versions, you have the opportunity to resell the product. Now, that is one business case you could use, or you could go for the long-term customer retention, where you are making these very small incremental changes, sometimes weekly or monthly, slowly moving from one platform to another, slowly moving from one software engineering language to another, and allowing your customers to slowly see all of those changes, keeping up to date with more modern technology without ever having to resell the product, and more importantly, without ever having to resell that painful integration that can occur the first time you implement into a complex enterprise software stack.
So Justin, when you see this happening, is the customer, it's not a matter, are they scared, but are they just not being told what's going to happen in the future? That they're not looking out perhaps what their needs are as a customer?
Well, the reality is that a lot of these waterfall style solutions try to be a one size fits all, and they try to fit the target for the day they're designed. And of course, with waterfall, we then go through development, deployment, testing, all of that. So it will be several months, if not years, between that design time and where customers actually get to use the product. Because of this, it's not that waterfall style companies are looking to put out a bad product. It's just the waterfall process means that they're always going to be behind where the market is. So yes, if you're using a piece of software that doesn't have a continuous update process, whenever you buy it or whenever it was really designed, it's going to be kind of stuck in that mode of integration, in that mode of working with the rest of the enterprise software stack. So basically, when you buy that way, you are buying a snapshot in time.
So one other thing, Justin, and we constantly hear this, is how are these other competitors of ours staying compliant in everything that occurs with the carriers and everything else that's required there? Is continuous improvement part of that also?
Of course. So it really comes down to each model that they make, each increment in time that they put out a new major version will have pretty decent update capability for those continuously changing carrier requirements. However, some are still stuck on a model that is so old where applying those changes, applying the ability for all the peak season surcharges we've seen the last several years, applying the new services that we're seeing come from the carriers requires a shipping stopping event. And of course, large customers do not want to have any downtime. So having a solution that's architected to be continuously updated without downtime is a key to maximizing the use of that labor that we all know is so difficult to keep or to acquire, train, and keep.
So we're moving a little bit into that technological flexibility concern and product limitations and all of that. So what other concerns are there with the product itself other than, CI/CD, waterfall, compliance? What else are you hearing?
It seems like a lot of the times they're asking, are we locking down what's out there for our product? With our product, the nice thing about it is the open architecture and some of the things that you can go in and change yourself and some of the things with it. You don't always have to come back to ProShip and ask for a change to be made. Our competitors aren't always that same way. When we have that open architecture, it allows their engineers to work with ours or even to do it themselves and not have to come back. Justin, would you care to just touch on that briefly and how that affects everybody?
Well, an open architecture, or one that is both modular and well documented, right? Just so we can define what open architecture really means, allows a balance between having your vendor do everything and extending the capability to business or internal software engineers at a customer. Okay, so if you want to have some control, you probably want an open architecture. It also does allow for faster upgrades, things of that nature. But what really affects the customers is, do I have to pay a vendor for everything? And the answer is no. The answer is there are many ways to deploy a product that allows business folks to adjust business thresholds, variables, and other attributes. There is a way to make it so that even the business rules themselves, if a company has on staff software engineers, they can write those fast business rules in those languages that are designed to runtime compile and give them that flexibility. So no, you don't have to settle for white glove everything. You don't have to pay for white glove everything, okay? You can hit this balance between how much your vendor supports you, how much your vendor does things for you, and how much you do for yourself in order to adjust that overall cost, long-term cost of the shipping software.
So Justin, that brings up a great point with business rules and even carriers being able to choose which carriers you're going to use at different times of the year, maybe turn them on and off. Is that an easy thing to do within the software?
Unless a customer chooses a very prescriptive set of rules. If it's 1 pound, it's going to ship first class. If it's 2 pounds, it's going to ship ground. If it's 3 pounds, it's going, that's a very prescriptive business rule. If you require your vendor to put in rules like that, no system is going to be flexible. On the other hand, if you work with your vendor and you say, okay, this is what I'm looking for, and you listen to your vendors and say, here's a great way to implement that, those recommendations, especially with an open system, open architected systems, are going to allow greater flexibility and greater changes to be made by the in-house staff, the logistics team, the IT team, whatever team should be making that without having to reach out to that vendor every single time you need a change. Let's be real specific here, because I know I got really vague there. Warehouse managers frequently, sometimes multiple times per day, may change closeout times, the carriers that are being evaluated, the services that are being evaluated within a group, in order to rapidly change the way their usage of the carriers are realized for that given day, and then change it completely for the next day without ever having to talk to their own internal IT staff or going out to their vendor. This is normal.
All right. So what do you think vendors say they're looking for a new shipping software? What questions do they need to ask to make sure they get the appropriate model that they're looking for, where they don't have to constantly talk to the vendor to get changes made? They can do things themselves.
Taylor, that's a great question. It seems like our customers are constantly saying, we know where we are today. What are all the different things that we're looking to do, and go from there? What do they ask for? They really want that big thing. They want the speed. They want the agility. They want to be able to go out and add carriers. Those are all the things that they're starting to ask for. But the other side of that too is you've got to go and ask the other teams that are out there and what their expectations are.
You mentioned speed. Why is being fast important? How do you determine what is fast enough for your own environment?
Well, speed isn't just about how quickly the label comes out. Speed is about, when we say, when somebody like ProShip talks about speed, we are talking about the time it takes to evaluate a particular set of services, find the winner, and produce the documents for it. Okay. Now, why that matters is because there's so much else that needs to get done. There's often a reason to reach into the ERP for Material Master because we're doing an international ship. There's a reason to reach into the WMS to pull address information. There might be more than one ERP or WMS or OMS that needs to be consulted. So when the software itself is naturally extremely fast at doing its base job, rating, producing documents, i.e. shipping, that means that you have a lot of time left to apply business rules and include the rest of the data you already have in your enterprise software stack. In other words, what are we talking about here? We're talking about automating as much as possible, right? I spoke earlier about the fact that labor is one of the most constricting things, whether it's in a store, whether it's in a warehouse, whether it's in a 3PL facility. Being able to utilize that labor to the best of your ability, put them where it matters, means automating everything else. So speed basically gives you a foundation to build that off of, because we can put more business rules. We can be more complete in what the software does versus what the human has to do otherwise. And it also means that if we want to move from people actually applying labels to the boxes to conveyor solutions or full automation, now we can go ahead and do that as well, because we've got all those rules in place, all of that logic in place, happening automatically for us. And because the shipping software's basic rate and ship doesn't take up much time, we have room for the business's needs, so we can automate that.
You always bring up that discussion of technology and automation, things along those lines. Has there been a big trend that you've seen, Justin, recently or in the last few years, not to replace labor, but to make it work more efficiently? How do you get more out of your labor?
Yeah, well, the reality is that throughout human history, we try to put people where it's not boring, right? We try to put people where their skills, knowledge are important. Some of that is in pick pack itself, right? Because when you finally package up that solution, you are looking at the presentation that the customer is going to get. When you are out there picking, you need somebody who can actually tell if a part, just due to random handling, has become crushed, if that box is no longer presentable to the user. You need that type of human judgment for everything that the customer sees at the end. You don't really need human judgment to pick out the cheapest label. Okay, so trying to remember that information yourself, or worse, trying to have your employees remember that information, that's a waste of effort, because that's not really going to truly affect your customer retention, the rate at which you're going to get customers coming back and ordering more from you. They're only going to see, let's face it, they're going to see if it doesn't get there on time, which should be an automated calculation anyway, or if the goods, worst case scenario, are damaged inside that box. So that's where I say put the people where they're going to make sure that the presentation to the customer is best, where they're going to have an effect that you can't automate.
And I guess one more thing on speed, Justin. We always talk about this. How do you build an ROI for speed and everything else with that? Is it a simple process when customers ask us, is there value in speed with that? How much more can you get done in a day?
I won't exactly call it simple, right? Because there are a lot of different factors that can go into an ROI. If you're 100% manually applying labels at this point in time, if shipping station operators are manually selecting carrier service levels, there's a lot of labor that we can save in that. Therefore, a lot of labor ROI. If your IT folks are busy working and they have to daily, weekly, even monthly touch the shipping software to make things work, again, there's money that you're spending that we can help you not spend, an ROI. If you're not rate shopping, there's an ROI. There's probably 8-10 different factors that can go into building an ROI for any shipping software. Some of them are prevention factors, right? Making sure that dangerous goods are appropriately labeled so you don't get fined. There's definitely an ROI in that. Making sure that address validation occurs so you don't get address correction fees, checking residential indicators. But really, it depends upon what is costing you money. Is it just labor, right? If it's just labor, yeah, there's different ways to go about that. But odds are, when you look at these other 9 or 10 factors, you're going to find a little bit of ROI in every single one, such that this can compound. And remember, once you've paid for the software, once you've amortized that, it's not as if those savings stop, right? You can actually build on top of them. You can add more automation. And I don't just mean conveyor, robots, things of that nature. I'm talking about you can add more business rule automation to make more decisions in a shorter amount of time. And so your people are spending more time on the parts that can't be automated.
So Justin, you mentioned connecting to new automation, and that leads to extensibility within the solution. Dave, was there anything you wanted to add on that topic?
Well, it seems like when you're getting to these whole things that we're talking about here is how do you stay competitive with everybody else that's out there? And where do you save that money? Where do you excel and make yourself better? It's kind of almost those world of 3PLs. Why are they more successful than some distribution that's out there and people doing it themselves? Do you see these business rules really being the factor and the software being the factor for how you make yourself better?
David, I'll tell you one of the primary reasons that 3PLs do significantly better than for per package basis than many retailers, and that's because 3PLs cycle their software stacks more frequently. Okay, 3PLs are no longer running iSeries software. 3PLs are no longer running components that require SOAP to interconnect them. Sorry, I'm getting a little technical there, but all of these things are little anchors, if you will, that minimize the amount of automation that can occur, minimize the ability for a shipper to take advantage of that speed, to automate as much as possible. And so really what it comes down to is all large companies have a complicated enterprise software stack. How frequently that stack changes, or as we're starting to see now, we are starting to see CI/CD processes for WMSs and OMSs and others, right? Anytime you're on something that has a fixed version number and will continue to have a fixed version number without manual intervention, you are now throwing out a small anchor, which is going to slow down your ability to speed up, okay? So as you start to stack CI/CD processes inside your enterprise software stack, as many 3PLs are now doing, you start to see that ability not to be slowed down by decisions that were made 10 years ago. We know changing out large portions of the enterprise software stack is difficult. However, that was one of the most frequently seen events during the pandemic itself. Companies were lock, stock, and barrel moving from old iSeries, moving from legacy ERPs and WMSs to newer, more modern ones, okay? And now what we've seen ourselves is now that that wave is past its peak, okay? There's still many out there that need to do this, but now we're seeing a wave of let's get the edge softwares. Let's upgrade those point of sale software, upgrade your shipping software, upgrade what the website looks like. And so we're seeing a lot of the benefits of that from retailers who always lagged behind 3PLs in the past.
So Justin, I'm gonna bring up a quick question. So one of the things you see coming back from our clients is making big changes. ERPs are expensive, WMSs are expensive, OMSs are expensive. Parcel shipping is that small niche of what you're talking about and changing. Is that an easier thing to change than everything else?
It should be. Quite frankly, it should be. It has some very easy points to understand where they connect to with the rest of the enterprise software stack. Some of those points can still be legacy. We've got customers still working off of mainframes, and I'm not just talking iSeries. We're talking traditional Hewlett-Packard mainframes. Okay, so yes, changing out shipping software is an easy way to gain a lot of ROI, gain a lot of flexibility in a warehouse without having to change out the rest of your enterprise software stack first.
I guess the question I'm getting to is, does it matter what we tie to? Does it matter what ProShip ties to?
It shouldn't. I'm gonna change that question to, does it matter what the shipping software ties to? It shouldn't. Any good shipping software vendors, professional services staff, with just a little bit of help from your tech folks, should be able to integrate to and from just about any other piece of software out there that has the ability to be integrated to.
There's one last thing I want to touch on for this subject, and it involves carriers. So you always, you see those vendors out there that say, oh, we support thousands of carriers, but they might only do it through certain means, or they don't support a carrier at all that a shipper needs, and you just don't have the time to wait for them to implement it. What's going on in terms of carriers?
Okay, so as we know, in the US, even in North America, there's always been a smaller amount of carriers than you might find in just about any European country. Okay, that has slowly changed. We've seen regional carriers starting to really help retailers before the pandemic, but during the pandemic, any trailer space that could be used was used. And we saw the growth of so many additional carriers in North America, as well as in Europe. But that meant that there was a lot of requirement to connect very quickly. And of course, an open architecture makes it a little bit easier to add new software, add new connections. but not every connection is equal. If you're just doing a couple hundred packages a day and you're not doing heavy rate shopping, a standard over the internet API connection is really good. Okay, it's really helpful. And it's something that any software company should be able to do during the time of an enterprise project. Meaning if they don't have one or two carriers that you need, they should be able to add those two carriers via API while the kickoff is going on, the initial implementation, UAT, so on and so forth. Right around UAT, they should be able to have those carriers ready for you. Now, if you are looking to ship tens of thousands of packages per day with a particular carrier, this is where an API may not be the best solution for you. This is where a premise engine might actually truly be the method you want to go. Again, we're talking about speed, right? We're talking about, we know that when a carrier is providing value to you via their API, when everybody else hits it at the same time, you are now sharing that resource, and due to the volume, your access to that resource will slow down, okay? On the other hand, if you are using what we refer to as a premise engine, meaning an engine which executes on the same operating system as the rest of the shipping software, it is only being used by your company. And so the only thing that will affect its speed is the quality of the engine build and how much you're using it. So that really gives you more control and gives you back that time to apply automated business rules.
So Justin, I'm going to ask you that tough question because everybody brings up on-prem. When they say, is it on-prem? Can it still be in the cloud and be on-prem?
Yeah, I'm actually starting to use a different term inside ProShip. We're saying on operating system, because really it doesn't matter where the operating system is. It can be in Google's cloud, it could be in Amazon, it could be in Azure, it could be in a Rackspace, it could be in a traditional old school data center that you physically control yourself. The reality is that with networking today, where that computer exists, where that operating system sits that provides your shipment execution capability is significantly less important than it was 15 years ago.
So being as close to where everything else is what you're really saying.
Yeah. If you're going to be shipping through your WMS, the shipping software should be hosted in the same location if practical. Okay. If you're going to be doing conveyor shipping and you want to really crank that conveyor down, meaning that your scan, weigh, print, and apply, the difference between the time you scan and the time you apply is going to be sub 2 seconds. You may want to install everything you can in that facility. Okay, because at that point in time, when you are looking at tens of milliseconds causing a miss and going off to a hospital or a jackpot lane, basically the architecture should be flexible based upon your need. If you're shipping from 4,000 stores, let's take for an example, right? Centralizing to where the point of sale solution goes back to, that's going to give you the best architecture. But the software you're using should be able to go together exactly like Lego blocks, but should be able to go together to meet the needs of the model you're trying to build.
And I'm going to go back to the one thing you just said there, Justin, connecting to multiple pieces of software, an OMS, a WMS, seems very complicated. Just 30 seconds, why does it make a difference?
You want to ensure nobody is manually entering data. You also want to take advantage of all the data you actually have. That's simple. It's a dichotomy.
Short and sweet, thanks.
All right, so let's move on to our final topic, and it's a big one, support. So I recall recently Bill Schrader, ProShip's president, said he didn't envy support teams because they have the hardest job of all, which I can only imagine. Dave, what is the current stigma surrounding shipping software tech support, and why are vendors in the industry facing such scrutiny?
I mean, let's be honest. Tech support is tough. You know, what's the number one goal of anything we're doing within support? To be quite honest, it's uptime. If you're having an issue, make sure it's taken care of. Figure out what that problem is. We've got standard processes that are out there, SLAs that have been out and determined. So we're trying to make it so that the customer has the most uptime. There's always those projects that'll take a little bit longer and they're not a priority, for people, they want to be up. Staggering those out a little bit further for some things that are planned are the best way to do it. Justin, what's the biggest change you've seen in the last few years?
Well, the biggest thing I've seen is I'm just going to go back to the biggest thing that can be done about support, and that is support doesn't start when you deploy the product. Support starts from when you design the product. A case in point here is, even though a company may have open architecture, where does your uniqueness go in there? Is it in a clear set of configurations and business rules, or is it peppered throughout the entire architecture? By putting it in a clear area, this means that support teams, this means that your own IT teams know that if there's a problem, it can only be in one of two places, right? The term we use in software engineering is separation of concerns, right? We want to know where it might be a carrier problem, where it might be an infrastructure problem within the shipping software itself, and where it might be a business rule or configuration problem. So starting support from the design phase makes everything significantly easier or less difficult. I won't really say easier. I'll say makes everything less difficult as you go down the layers to try to figure out, where is this problem? How do I isolate where the thing is? Reproducing the problem for an R&D person, if it truly is a product problem or an engine problem. And then finally, applying the results such that the customer doesn't have to deal with just the initial workaround, but gets the true fix to the solution, right? That all starts from the first day you decide you're going to build a product.
And I think the question coming back on support also is, everybody will say, oh, I can always get support from the daytime hours. What about that, that 24/7, 365 approach?
Oh yeah, everybody's going to have a peak. So the reality is during that peak, you're probably going to be more shifts than you expect. You're going to be shipping longer than you expect. So working with a company that can provide you either intermittent 24/7 support or just 24/7 support from day one. This is something that a shipper should look at when selecting their software. Frankly, they're going to look at that when they're looking at their ERPs or WMSs as well. Your shipping software should be no different. You should understand that you can either pick that up from day one, or if you only think you're going to use it a small amount of time, that should be available to you on demand for an understandable fee if you just have to use it once or twice a year because of the way your things work.
Anything else on support, gentlemen?
Other than the fact it's tough.
Support is tough, but it's also the responsibility of every part of your vendor's company to help make as best as possible.
Well said. All right, final thoughts. So what advice do you have for shippers struggling with all of these challenges that we just talked about?
I guess I'm going to start it off. Have a conversation. How good are things going within your company? Everybody talks about peak. How do we do in peak? How do we do, after peak? It's a continuous process. You've got to keep evaluating. Today is when you're asking questions about 6 months from now. If you're not getting the support that you have from your current vendor, talk to them, talk to us. It's a conversation, and also talk to your team. Plan it out. Where I am today, where do I want to be in 2 years? Those are the best conversations we have.
Yeah, I want to go back to the state of the industry real quick. I want to remind companies that there are a handful of dedicated shipping software companies. These companies will continue to derive all of their revenue from shipping software, providing little to no distraction by other pieces of the enterprise software stack, which could cannibalize their shipping software engineering and sales staff, as well as the support staffs, I guess I should say, to wrap into our last conversation. So really understand about those companies if you've got the time. Do a little research, see who's been around a certain amount of time, see what their background is, what their history is, and see who owns them, right? A lot of things you can tell about a company by looking at its history and its current ownership. Current ownership can often tell you about where it's going to go.
Dave, any final thoughts from you?
I think that same thing that Justin just said. Look at who is behind your software and what's going with it. It tells a story. The last thing I'm going to throw out there, stay active and look what everybody else is saying in the industry. There's some great blogs that are out there. There's some great podcasts. Keep digging, keep asking questions because it's constantly changing.
Agreed. All right, well, that's all we have for you today. So thank you for joining us for another ProShip ParcelCast. If you'd like to learn more about ProShip's industry-leading multi-carrier shipping software, please visit our website at www.proshipinc.com. If you have any questions, just a reminder that you can reach ProShip at sales@proshipinc.com or 1-800-353-7774, or just reach out to one of our guests today on LinkedIn. I think they'd enjoy that. We hope you join us again, and thanks for tuning in.